Okay guys, I'm going to continue with the example problems. So let me re-explain bias and unbiased. So bias is any sampling method that was kind of wrong and it wasn't a random sample. And so it didn't give everyone an equal chance or everyone to be honest about their opinion. So some of the biased answer might be because of the wording of the question. For example, if I word a question like this, people who have been doing, let's say it like this, people who want to purchase a gun usually does it by kind of like a spontaneous feelings, like either they feel they want to hurt someone, they want to revenge or things like that. And it showed that the cooling time period helped them to actually reconsider their purchase. Would you be in favor of this waiting period to purchase a gun, or would you be against this waiting period to purchase gun? And so like this question is worded in a way that would persuade you to actually consider positively about the waiting period, as by phrasing it into like, oh, people usually make this impulse purchases because they they're very emotional. But if you give them some type of cooling period, they will actually be able to think logically, and there'll be less gun violence and less gun purchase, blah blah blah, right? Whereas if you actually word this question in a way like, buying the gun and owning a gun and protecting yourself is your right, would you consider this waiting period as part of purchasing the gun procedure or not? Well, you have already kind of like informed them that this is your right, and they're trying to make it even more difficult for you to exercise your right. Would you actually want to support this kind of thing? So do you see how wording of the survey is actually very important? Because even though you think you're a pretty smart, logical being, we all get persuaded by how they present something, right? And so my hope of studying statistics for you is that you'll be able to be more analytical and will be able to actually see through the surface, right? Just don't just trust it just because it says 99% of satisfaction guaranteed, or 99% of the people rated us like 5-star or things like that. Like, because you really need to see like what kind of sample did they have? Like, did they have a random sample, or did they have people that wanted to say positive things about them? You know, like you want to think about, you want to consider all these things. Like it just makes you a smarter person, because people these days throw you all this data, all this statistics to make them sound a little more convincing. And it is very convincing if you have done it right. But a lot of people also don't know how to do it right, okay? So you want to be smart about this because you don't want to get taken advantage of. So let's look at number 2. It says, we already did this. So we're good. We're good with number 1. So let's go to number 2. Determine the survey question that will best obtain the desired answer. Taylor wants to determine the most popular football team at the school. A. What is your favorite college football team? B. What is your favorite football team? And C. Do you like the Dallas Cowboys or the Pittsburgh Steelers? What do you think? So it didn't specify if it was looking for a college football team. It just said popular football team. So by specifying college, it actually eliminates other football team that might be around. So A is not a great question, right? Because it already eliminates your choices. C is also not a great thing because you're only given 2 choices and you have to choose in, between the 2. So B would be the most appropriate question to ask if you want to get an answer to the question, what would be the most popular football team at the school? Okay, so some of this is like a commonsensical, but just check it twice. State whether each situation represents an experiment or an observational study. If it is an experiment, identify the control group and the treatment group, then determine whether there is bias. Number 4, a teacher has his first class complete review activities the day before the test. His second class does no review activities. He compares their test result. Do you think there was a treatment? I know treatment sounds like a medicine and things like that, but it doesn't have to be. It's something that was very specifically done to the group of people. So like they wouldn't usually do it, but you made them do it to see the effect of it. So the treatment for it is an experiment, sorry, because I have a treatment, because observation study, there is no treatment, there is no involvement, you just watch. Experiment, and the treatment is the review activity, right? And the control group is the second class, that had no review. Would there be a bias? Maybe. It really all depends on the class. Like, has his first class been doing better throughout the year? And then now they're getting more review activities and getting even better? Or is the first class and the second class about the same level? So like, those things would affect the result, right? Like, it doesn't matter if you review or not. If you already were struggling with math, there's a lot more to fill in than maybe that review activity. So I wouldn't say there was no bias unless I know more about the first class and the second class and the nature of the students who are in those classes. So it could be bias, okay? Number 5, Jamie finds 100 people, half of whom volunteer at a homeless shelter, and compares their average annual income. Okay, so this is an observational study, right? It's observational study because there is no treatment. They didn't put these people in a homeless shelter. They were already doing the volunteering at the homeless shelter, and you happen to just like categorize them and then say, oh, half of them works at the homeless shelter and half of them don't. So let's compare the average annual income, although I don't know how that would be a factor of like your income, but maybe they're curious. Do I think this is bias? Maybe, because I don't know how Jamie found those 100 people. Like, where did he go to find these people? Like, so it could be bias. It just all depends on how he found them, and yeah. And so, do you see how there's just so many variables, and you need to be thinking about all these things, and if it's not clear on the text, and you can't just assume that, sure, it's random, sure, it's fine. No, you have to question, you have to test, you have to see if you are seeing what you are supposed to see, right? So again, number 5, I could see that it might be biased sample because I don't know the nature of those 100 people, okay? If this was a random sampling, sure, it's unbiased. But if this 100 people were just like, I don't know, like if I grab 100 people from the street, I don't know about the randomness of that. All right, number 4, determine whether the situation calls for a survey, observational study, or experiment. I explained the process. Number 6, you want to test a drug that reverses male pattern baldness. Okay, you want to test a drug. Would you do survey? Would you do observational study? Or would you do experiment? Well, testing a drug would require for a treatment, and any treatment would call for experiment. So I will call this experiment because there will be a treatment. And 7, you want to find voters' opinion on recent legislation. You would not do treatment for this, right? It's not an experiment. You not do observational study because you will have to ask someone about something, like their opinion about the recent legislation. And so we will do survey. Does that make sense? How the difference between survey, observational study, and experiment? Observational study, you want to find correlation, and usually you just watch. There is nothing done to the people that you're watching. Experiment, you are definitely doing something. Like if there's a treatment, if there's medicine, if you're giving them something special that other people don't get, it's an experiment. Survey, you have a question and you want to get an answer. Well, that's not true. Observational study and experiment, you also go with the question, but it's a little bit different. You don't ask directly. It's something that you have to do like over time, like whether you see an experiment, you see how the treatment is acting, or like you see how the past experience of the individuals and how they're interacting, how they're you're observing those things. Survey is basically you're asking, do you like this class or not, kind of thing. Okay, and again, that would be a bias survey because I'm your teacher and I have an ability to influence your grade, right? Because I'm the one who's grading. And if I ask, do you like my teaching or do you like my class? You might already thinking that, oh, if I answer no, she might use it against me. So this is not a very good sampling method, so survey, because of the person who's asking the question. Think about this way. More people will lie about whether or not they actually use a seatbelt if the person who's asking the question is a policeman, right? If the policeman comes and said, do you wear your seatbelt or do you do drugs? How many people will say yes to that, right? Because you know the consequence that will come from the answer honestly. You won't answer honestly, which will create a biased response. I think this is the last one. Determine whether the following statement showed correlation and causation and explain. 8. When I exercise, I'm in a better mood. Okay? This is a correlation, right? Because unless you have compared, this is a correlation. Like doing exercise doesn't mean that it's going to cause you to have a better mood, right? They might have a very strong correlation, but it may not guarantee it. And causation means that it's always causing it, right? Like this action A will make this action B happen. Correlation is more like this. By doing this action A, I might increase or decrease the chance of having this action B happening. Okay, there is a difference here. And so I would consider 8 as correlation. 9, if we have a level 2 snow emergency, we do not have school. This is totally causation, right? Because that's the protocol that they go through. So level 2 snow emergency will always cause no school. So it's not correlation, it just happens. So therefore it's a causation. I hope this helps you to clarify what correlation and causation is. If it doesn't happen 100% of the time, like it's like A doesn't make B happen, that is correlation. Okay, because correlation means you have a chance. Causation means it's 100% every time happening. Okay. I know we like using the word like causes something and things like that, but it's not very accurate wording if you actually look into statistics. So I know this was a longer lesson, so I'm actually giving you 2 days to work on your problems. And if something was unclear and if you needed me to explain something further, I think I would suggest reading the textbook first, because textbook has all the examples and also like it defines things maybe in the terms that you need to hear. I'm defining in a way that my own way, right? So to help you understand. And so please look at textbook first, and if the textbook doesn't help, I'm here to help. So yeah, I hope this chapter can be fun for you if you've never done statistics before, and for sure this is useful in real life. So those of you who are thinking, when do we ever gonna use math? Well, here it is. We use statistics all the time. So enjoy it. I will see you next week.